Okay, everybody, good morning. Hope you're well. 11:30 a.m. here, Baltics time on Wednesday. Crazy days, as always. I'm sure people are downloading Signal, if you haven't, to find out what that's all about. Never going to be as secure as government comms, but nothing is purely secure. As we know in Bitcoin world, it's all a spectrum. But we'll see how Signal downloads go after all of this craziness. Going to talk about gold today, specifically how gold relates to Bitcoin. So what I've shown, let's start with this one. What I've shown here for a long time has been the old power trend, drawing some different bands, multiples. I just did an update about this. Okay, I show it a lot. And I think it can help people to, settle through the Malox moments, because even though you can have huge swings from 60,000 Bitcoin, $60,000 Bitcoin down to $16,000, $17,000 Bitcoin in the course of 6 months or a year, in the grand scheme of it all, it's still inside of a trend, which still is representative of the growth of a network. And price can be overlaid on this growth of a network, talking about adoption, because adoption grows typically with networks in power curves. But now I want to show gold. Okay, so gold is obviously a ancient relic, not barbarous from my view, although that's what the Paul Krugmans and the Nouriel Roubini's like to say. I'm going to put this on log scale. Okay, so it's still a power curve. All right, it's important to keep in mind, because if we looked at just gold itself in terms of dollars, all right, where it's $35 an ounce back in 1971 to just passing $3,000 an ounce for the first time ever this month. If you draw a line through that, a trend line, that's a straight line. That's exponential, okay? But we can take the Bitcoin price, all right, Bitcoin price. We can take the Bitcoin price divided by the gold price, and what will that give us? It will give us this. That is the Bitcoin price in terms of gold. All right, and put that on long scale. What do we see? Notice anything, first of all, that's familiar? It's the same type of a curve. It's the same type of a curve. Okay, so gold will not look like this. I should have had the gold chart just to show you exactly, but it doesn't really matter. Gold is a straight line on log scale. Bitcoin is not. And also Bitcoin in terms of gold is not. Okay, which is very, very interesting. The R squared is not as good, 1 percentage point lower, 95% R squared, but it's still pretty good. Now, I do want to run through this again just to show you the differences between just the pure dollar. But before we do that, let's look here. Okay, so very clearly over the last 2-3 years, since the bear or the retreat from the all-time high in 2021 has been occurring, if you looked at Bitcoin in terms of gold, Bitcoin is pretty weak. Okay, so in other words, if you had gold, it could be a good time to buy Bitcoin. Again, not financial advice. Or you could just look at it as, well, gold is kind of outperforming Bitcoin. Of course, that's not fully the case, because if you had $17,000 Bitcoin in the fall of 2022, and Peter Zion is on Joe Rogan saying it's 16,000, and he was saying it's $17,000 overvalued, and Bitcoin is been around 100,000 now for the last 3-4 months. Of course, that's a mistake, and Bitcoin is very much going to give you a better return than gold. But nonetheless, relative to the dollar, gold is higher than it's ever been in history. All right, and it just happened here. Got this line right here. This is not the gold price in dollars. This is the gold price in Bitcoin. Or actually, I should say this is the Bitcoin price in ounces of gold. So $3,000 gold took us to, look at the tooltip now. It's also in the axis, but look at the tooltip. March 18th, 2025. What was the Bitcoin price in terms of gold? 27 ounces. 27.27 ounces to be exact. So that means that one Bitcoin is worth 27 ounces of gold. If you take one Bitcoin price at the time, 80,000 or so, divided by the gold price at the time, $3,000, you will get 27.27 ounces of gold, all right? The trend line, 55 ounces. Okay, so again, very interesting that Bitcoin relative to gold, much weaker in recent years than, say, Bitcoin relative to the dollar. Relative to the dollar, we're right on trend. Okay. The trend of Bitcoin, as of a couple days ago, unfortunately, I'm a couple days delayed right now with my feed, but $87,000 as of March 24th, 2 days ago, close, Monday. Trendline, $96,000 Bitcoin. Now let's look at it in gold terms. Again, March 24th. Price, Bitcoin in terms of gold, 29 ounces. Trend line, 55 ounces. Okay, so quite a bit undervalued relative to the trend, Bitcoin in terms of gold. And when you say undervalued relative to gold, it means if you had gold, perhaps it's a good time to buy Bitcoin. Perhaps. All right, so what I want to do is just, we'll project out again, but what I want to do is go a little bit into the past here and look at the prior cycles. Okay, so 2021, the double top. Again, as the trend line is growing, it looks more over its skis or over the blue line here in 2021. But if we look at these in terms of multiples, we're nowhere close to the red line. Okay, so relatively speaking, 1 sigma or 67% of the time is inside the blue bands. We did get outside of that. We did get outside of around a 1 sigma move. Okay, and we kissed it in the fall of 2021. But it was not as extreme as it in dollar terms. Okay, so if you go back to the dollar chart, again, with my multiples, you're getting closer. Still not kissing the red line, but you're getting closer to a 97.5 percentile move. I'm talking about, of course, this red band at the top. Okay, so we see the red band at the top there. In terms of gold, not as good. What was the price? At this time, remember, Bitcoin's hitting $60,000 for the first time. What does that mean in gold? Well, gold is less than $2,000 an ounce at this point in 2021. 33, 34 ounces. So it'd take you 33, 34 ounces to buy one Bitcoin. Again, let's just go back to today. What's the number? 27. Okay, so gold is more valuable at $3,000 an ounce today versus $85,000, $6,000, $7,000 Bitcoin. I know it is at the moment of this recording. Gold is more valuable. Okay, it's only going to cost you 29 ounces compared to the top in 2021. But there's obviously a lot of caveats here. Okay, we're obviously not near the top. We're below trend. And, things are a little bit different. Now, let's compare the prior trend before that, the prior top, I should say, 2017. Here we did kiss the 97.5 percentile. All right, and we got to the 15th, 16th, 17th of December. Here, it would take 15 ounces of gold for one Bitcoin. Okay, so remember, your price is $20,000 Bitcoin, roughly, at this moment. So 10 ounces of gold would be $2,000 gold. And it's a little bit more than that. So it's like, $1,500, $1,600, whatever it is, dollar gold at the time here in 2017. Relative to today, let's go back to today. Again, just to look at it in gold price, to be completely clear, at $3,000 gold and $85,000, $6,000 Bitcoin, it's 28 ounces of gold. So if you pull that window back long enough, Bitcoin is definitely way more valuable here, even at the top. even at the top. Let's go back to 2011. Sorry, 2013. 2013, the double top. $60 Bitcoin here in the start of the year, $1,300 Bitcoin at the end of the year. About 1 ounce of gold, actually under. Bitcoin was never past parity for gold as far as dollar pricing here. So 0.9, let's get over 0.9, 0.94. 0.94 ounces of gold on the close. That was the local top there. For Bitcoin, yeah, 11. I have it on the chart there. I should just read my notes. $1,100 gold. Okay. So, that's quite a difference, isn't it? Just in a little over 10 years. Whereas if you were listening to Peter Schiff at any of these times, he's telling you Bitcoin has no value, gold has all the value. For less than an ounce of gold, at the top in 2013, you could buy 1 Bitcoin for less than an ounce of gold. And if you go back before 2013, then it just looks like silly season. And very quickly, by the way. Here is 1/10 of an ounce of gold is 1 Bitcoin. All right, that's rising up to the top in 2013, October 1st. 1/10 of an ounce of gold can get you 1 Bitcoin. And 1% of an ounce of gold, let's find the first, is the start running up to that first top in February 2013. So obviously the numbers just look silly here. And the point is, a very gradual, exponential, straight line on log scale gold trend is only going to get you so much, even as it continues to all-time highs now versus Bitcoin. If you had followed Peter Schiff's advice, you would have, and many unfortunately did, you would have really regretted it, because the risk-reward ratio was just incredible during this time in 2011, 12, 13, as Bitcoin was finding a price. Okay, so let's look at the bands. So this is the trend, the smooth black line. This is the all-time trend. Okay. Now let's just look at the bands themselves. I don't have the evolving trend, but the evolving trend is going to be in the middle of the blue bands. Okay, you can just imagine it. You can see it. I do have the evolving trend here. Let me reset. This is in dollar terms, so let's just put just the red bands. Okay, so you can see how the trend evolves in the past. Pretty fast. I've talked about this many times. Fast, and then slows down a little bit. But then really from about 2016, you can see that it kind of takes the same form as the future all-time trend. Okay. From about 2016. Okay. Now let's make that comparison with gold. Here's the all-time trend. It's a little bit different. It's important to point out. A bit more wobbly. And even into 2017, again, when I say wobbly, what am I looking at? I'm looking at the red bands, how they look around the black band. Okay, so it's not, of course, here is going to be volatile. When you're under $1 or under $30 Bitcoin and under $1,500, $1,300 gold, and also under $1,300 Bitcoin, of course, it's going to be volatile. But the form is generally the same. It's true. The form is generally the same of those red bands. But we can say that from 2016, end of 2016, there's still a little bit of, looks a little bit more volatile, kind of ramps up a little bit more here with this top and then falls. And actually it's falling more relative to the all-time. How can I explain that more? Let's zoom in. Look at how as the price of Bitcoin and gold has fallen deeply in 2022 to only 9 ounces of gold at the end of December 2022. It's still under trend, and look at what I'm looking at is sort of the slope of the red dotted lines here relative to the black line. See how the black line is moving up in a smooth direction because this is the all-time data, but the red lines are not keeping pace with that. Okay, so they're falling down, falling. And then they start to go back up at this normal sort of pace of the black line. So that's interesting. That shows you that at least in the sort of very short term, Bitcoin is really pulling down, lacks momentum. It doesn't mean it couldn't turn around immediately, absolutely, but it's lacking some momentum in terms of gold uh, with all the data that we have, which is a little bit different than our dollar price. With our dollar price, if you look at these red lines, see how, when the data becomes actual, uh, you know, I'm moving backwards in time here. So it's this theoretical future data, the smooth lines. But then if you look at, as the trend line has evolved, bounces around, looking at a multiple here, still we look like sort of just right on trend. All right, we kind of nicely move into this theoretical future line. A little bit different with gold. Gold makes it seem like, well, maybe this trend line is even going to be pulled down more, and clearly it's going to be because we're under the trend line. So at 29 ounces of gold per Bitcoin, that is not half, but close to half, a little bit more than half of the trend line. That's a deep discount to trend. So that's why you get that sort of heaviness in the red lines that are pulling down the all-time trend, and it will continue to do so every day. The way that this works at the bottom of the day is, excuse me, the way that this works at the end of the day is, as long as the Bitcoin price is under this black line, it's going to pull the trend down. If it's over the black line, it'll pull the trend, the black line, up. And so we've had many, many years now, couple years, 3 years, pretty much, of pulling this trend line down, and it's no stopping. As we're in an environment of very high inflation, price inflation, presumably, global uncertainty, definitely, and $3,000 gold is strong relative to Bitcoin. So, again, it doesn't mean Bitcoin couldn't turn this around in a week or a month. Maybe it will. But there's weakness here for Bitcoin relative to gold. You could also look at it as an opportunity. Right? It's a Chinese proverb, right? Weakness equals opportunity, or I guess that's chaos equals opportunity. In any event, interesting that this chart shows a lot more weakness in terms of gold than dollars. Here, Bitcoin just seems nice and on trend and stable. But here, gold looks a little bit strong. And to be absolutely clear, I see that this trend absolutely would continue. This is a 95% R squared. It's a power trend. Again, gold as a function of price on log scale is a straight line. Bitcoin as a function of price on log scale is this sort of slowly asymptotic declining rate of increase. So it shows you that the power trend dominates. The power trend is stronger than the exponential trend because we're comparing one exponential asset, gold, versus one power asset, Bitcoin. Which one do we see? We see a power trend. It means the power trend dominates, which again reaffirms my intuitive understanding, but also belief. You can say that Bitcoin is just being adopted. Beyond the money printing, beyond the hype of sovereign wealth funds and liquidity, Bitcoin is simply being adopted. Definitely some weakness, though. Definitely some weak. Sorry, my tooltip I always have struggled. I wanted it down in this corner because of the rest of the chart, but it looks a little bit. Let me take the mouse off for a second. So, as long as gold is high here, inflation is high, uncertainty is high. This is a little bit challenging for Bitcoin. It's going to keep pulling that black line down, that all-time line down, and again, if you have gold, great buying opportunity for Bitcoin. You can have both and just keep both, or only keep Bitcoin. Never financial advice on the show, of course. I always make those little disclaimers, but I think that it's a nice way to validate the thesis that Bitcoin is still an asset that is growing according to the network effect, right? Which power trends illustrate, because we have it both on the dollar-based chart and we have it on the gold-based chart. Slightly different though, definitely some gold strength. Dollar weakness seems to be showing here in excess of what Bitcoin is doing or should be doing relative to the trend. So a little bit different flavor. Hope that helped you guys. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments, or if you want to see any other illustrations like this with different assets. But gold, Bitcoin for sure, absolutely relatable, like for like assets. The same ontological sort of arena that we can think of here when we're comparing, base money, core money of the system, gold versus Bitcoin. And even though all of the traditional financial assets, dollars, bonds, stocks, gold, they move in exponential, Bitcoin moves in power, and we see that both in dollar terms. We also see that in gold terms. All right, that's gonna be it for me for this one. Thank you guys for watching. Have a good day.